initial run through of routing and gain staging as promised. So to begin with, I've flown in some tracks, and let's say that these are the audio files we're going to be mixing. It's a simple session. There's bass, guitars, drums, and vocals. Right, everything's maxed at this point. Call up the mixer, click into the mixer, click select all, and then unselect the stereo out and master. Double click the level, the dB level, and put everything at -12 to start with. I would even, with something this loud, I would go further. Didn't like that. -20. There we go. And I could, and you turn up at the master if you can't hear as well. But you can see even at -20, we're peaking at -10. Then you start building component submixes. So these two bass tracks, in Logic 10 you can move multiple tracks. You should build drums, bass, guitars, any padding instruments, lead instruments, vocal harmonies, and then lead vocal harmonies, etc. So we're going to take these two, and because we're routing, we're going to find the output. In Logic 9 you'll have input and output beside each other above the group and automation. And we're going to take the output of the two selected kick tracks, and we're going to send them to bus 1. Oops, I sent it to bus 2. It's not a big deal. And I'm going to name them kick sub. And then it doesn't show up in here, so I'm not going to be able to move these around like I'll need to later. So I'll say create track, and in Logic it's create arrange track, and then I can move it around where I want it to go. And I did that by going down here and clicking Control and holding Control while I click, and then it says create track, and in Logic 9 is create arrange window track, and then we can test it. Right, we're just getting the kick there. We need to do the same thing for the snare. So remember, we're not using sends, right? We're routing. So we're not sending to a bus, we're routing to a bus. And so we'll go to bus 3, whatever bus is open, right? We'll call that snare sub, and then we'll click and hold, and we'll create new track. Notice how in Logic 10 it creates the bus in the arrange window right after the track that's selected. That's just good to know. Overheads need this to be routed as well, so we'll do the same thing. Send it to bus 4. OH sub. Right? Check that. Yep, that's good. Then hold Control, click it, create track, down it goes. Now these are our component. We have no other drum tracks, but if we did, we would route them to the same bus. We're going to route these submixes to. So where it says stereo out, click and hold by highlighting everything. Go to number. Oh, I made a mistake. Went to bus 6. It's not that big of a deal. I would go back and fix it, but I don't want to. So then I'm going to click and hold this, and I'm going to press Alt C, and because I like to make the component submixes a different color, and I use the default coloring, so you can see we go from left to right. We have component tracks, component submixes, and then the submix. And then we check. And if I mute it now, that's how I test. If I mute it, everything and the drums disappear, and they're not picking up in other tracks, then I've routed correctly. Then I'm going to take all of my guitars, route them to a submix. Guitars submix. Oh, I forgot to make this a track. There we go. There's the drum sub. Right. And now the guitars, I'll do the same thing. Create a new track. Guitars, color it right. Alt. Click on the track. Alt C. I choose Burnt Auburn. And then I have my lead vocal, which for the moment I don't need a submix on, so I can just pull that down. And I'm going to change the color of that as well, so we have a kind of uniformity. And then I'm going to test. Actually, you know what? I made a mistake there, and I'll show you the mistake. You should never use the lead vocal as you should always route the lead vocal to the submix, and I remember why now, because there's a leveling issue. So someone asked this, and I made a mistake and said, no, don't worry about it. Actually do have the vocal sub because you'll notice that the component track, the lead vocal, we've gain staged it, and so we do that for gain staging reasons. Anyways, so then we have and then we're going to draw the great track, move that down, and then we have our various levels of submixing. But here we have drums, guitars, vocals. It's very useful to have this going on when we're mixing for a number of different reasons. One of them, of course, is we can just treat the guitars and go back and forth, because you typically want to work at mix level when you're tweaking. But also because, let's say at some point we decide, well, those guitars should come down a little bit. We can bring all the guitars down. Anyways, that's routing in a nutshell.